Hi YouTube, Jeremy here with Simple Little Life, and today is day 22 of the 30-day video challenge. I was going to shoot a gun review video today, but it's really windy outside, and shooting guns in the wind isn't fun, and also I hate the sound of wind noise in the audio when you're recording outside, so we're just going to scrap that for now. We can do that video later. Today's video is actually a request from a viewer, Flavio. I apologize if I mispronounce your name, but he'd asked if I could possibly show the knife collection that I've made. And this isn't the full collection. A lot of them I've sold, given away, some I've lost, but I do have the very first knife I've made, as well as some of the earlier ones and some ongoing ones, some more recent ones. So we're just going to take a look at some of the knives that I've made. Stay with me. I'm just going to do a quick handheld shot of the blades that I have with me that I have made, and I'll take each one of them up and I'll show you some of the details on each one of them. Alright, so we might as well start right in the very beginning with the very first knife I ever made, and that is this blade here. This is a bit of a beast. It's 1/4 inch 01 tool steel, and this knife was actually hand beveled. I did the bevels, everything all by hand, and I've used this one, I would say, coming up on 3 years now. And it's held up fairly well. I've skinned one deer with this knife. I've used it to baton a lot of wood. I've taken it camping as my main camp knife. You know, my sons and I will do like overnight canoe trips and stuff. And it's held up pretty good. It's got Babinga scales, brass pins. And like I said, this bevel on this 1/4 inch blade was done entirely by hand, which is actually a fairly easy way. When you're filing your knives by hand, you get really nice plunge lines, and it's quite easy, but it takes a long time, as you could imagine. So there's the very first knife I ever made. One of the, I think the second or third knife I made this just as a utility garden blade. I wanted something that I could just take out in the garden, you know, for doing different things to our plants, and I didn't care whether it got rusted up or left out in the rain or whatever. And this one I just made from a Nicholson file, tempered it. And if you're getting into knife making and you don't have good quality steel readily available, if you go out and buy a good Nicholson file, they're like 10 bucks, and you can anneal them. So basically you heat them up to the point where they're red, and then you let them cool at room temperature, and that will soften them up so you can work with them, and then you can reheat treat them again. So again, this is like Babinga, I believe, on the scales. And just a simple knife. The edge has held up really well on this blade, and I've sharpened it only one time, and it still is really sharp. Nice usable knife. We still use it for gardening, and I think this was the third knife I'd ever made. Another one of the early knives I made, this was kind of a prototype, and this was more my idea of a last ditch kit type blade. We'll get a close-up of it. It's kind of crude. Again, this one was done all by hand. And this is just a solid piece of 01 tool steel. It was originally 1/4 inch. I've narrowed it down quite a bit, but basically this was kind of like a survival type knife. You see the little finger groove there. It's all smooth, rounded off. You grab onto her. You can keep a little pressure on the spine, and in an emergency, this could do something. Obviously not going to process any wood, but for small emergency cutting tasks, you could use this blade. I've half tempted to make a few more of these just because they're kind of cute. I would need to get smaller kydex. I made this with a fairly thick kydex sheath, and that kind of stinks because it makes it a bulky little package, but that was also one of the very first knives I had ever made. Where do we go now? I suppose this was one of my early designs. This knife I made maybe 2 months ago, and just a simple hunting knife. Feels good in the hand. Babinga scales again. Either that or cocoa. I think it's a Babinga. This one has the blue liners. Same liner material I used in my last blade, and then pretty much the same pin material I used for all my knives. And just a simple hunting knife with wooden scales. Obviously the two Bushcraft knives that are being given away, I've showed these. Twinsy knives, and there is a slight difference, though I will let you know. One of them is Coke bottled in the handle. You can see that. Let me get the focus in here. So you see that Coke bottle contour, and the other one is not. The one I had made in the video for the giveaway is this one with the Coke bottle handles, and I think if you've got smaller hands, it's going to be a little bit better suited to you. This one is a little larger, just bigger all around. This one still has a decent palm swell to it, but this one feels a little bit smaller than this one does, but this is the one for the giveaway, and this is the one for me. Twinsy knives, almost identical. Basically just a take on this knife, but with that G10. Now I made a mistake building this knife, and when I marked out my G10, I did it wrong. So you can see that this side starts out with black and changes color from there, and this one starts out with the coyote. Or the desert tan, whatever you call that. And so that was kind of a whoops. I made this knife quite, I don't know, a few months ago. This is a really nice feel in the hand too. And I was doing a bunch of experiments with different blade finishes, and I'm changing it all the time just to see what works. And this is kind of like a testing knife, I guess you could say. One knife I made, this is quite a while ago now, is this little Necker Skinner. And the idea behind this one was just a really small skinny knife, and this one actually fits really nice in the hand if you were skinning an animal. You can see the nice fine control you'd have there. Keeps your hand in the blade, so you got a nice belly there. And I did a hand hammered finish on this knife. I just basically heated up and beat it up before I treated it. I haven't put an edge on this one yet because I need to get the a leather sheath made for it. Just a single brass pin there and a nice hong handle. Fairly simple blade, but I think this one will be quite useful for skinning animals. One of the popular knives, I seem to sell a lot of these, are these little, I call them little Pocket Pal. Just a very small blade, and I think it's very similar design to the CRKT Minimalist. I didn't copy that design at all, I just wanted a small blade. I didn't trace it out or anything like that. This was all a design I drew freehand, and this was a prototype I had made. Good little knife, and feels pretty good. Even in my big hands, it's the finger grooves are big enough that it's a fairly useful blade, and I'm selling quite a few of these. This one I made for my daughter. She wanted a knife, and of course, pink. This is a knife I made for my boys. This was actually an accident blade. Something went wrong on it. I forget exactly what it was, and they wanted a knife real bad, so I gave them this one. I did some experimenting with the jimping. I put some jimping on this blade in my milling machine. If I could get this, you can see the jimping right in there. It's not really all that comfortable, but it does give grip. But also with this one, I used a much thinner handle. I think I used 1/8 G10 there with a red liner, just so it would fit my boy's hands. Obviously, it could be a smaller handle, but I thought if at least it's not so wide, they can get a bit of a grip on it. Another knife that I made as a test knife, and this one I've showed out in other videos. This was the very first time I used G10. I don't know why I used orange. I just ordered it, I guess. And then the blue liners on this blade. And this blade has been beaten to crap. I use this to process all my firewood. This thing will split 2x4s. I can just take a 2x4 and whack it, and it just chops it like you wouldn't believe. Keeps an edge really well, and I quite like this blade. It's a little too heavy to be a useful blade to carry when you're hunting or something, but it's also a little bit too thick for how, for its size. Super thick knives, I don't know. I see some merit to them, and I also see some, why do you really need that? On the one hand, this thing splits really well. I mean, one swing and it's, you know, it splits wood really well. It's a really good chopper. And when you do get it going, you have a lot of momentum when you're trying to chop wood with stuff. So similar to that one, I haven't finished it yet, but this is another blade, very similar in design. You can tell the handle will be pretty much identical, but it'll have a third pin in the center and no lanyard hole. This one I'm actually building to process our chickens with, and I'm calling this one the chupacabra, which is a mythical creature that would kill farm animals, so I think it's well suited for this blade. The grind's all done. I just need to actually build a longer dip tank. I'm going to take a piece of steel pipe, weld the bottom on it so I can fill it with oil, because the quench bucket that I have isn't deep enough that I can quench the whole blade. Also, I need to get a forge before I heat treat this, because this is simply too much surface area, too big of a blade to get an even heat on it with a torch. So I'm holding off on finishing this one up. I do want to get it done soon because I'd like to play with this one and really beat it up a bit. But this should be a good blade too. Very similar to this one. And then one of the last knives that I've made is obviously the one I did the last video on. That's this guy right here. I really like those mosaic pins. I think they really dress up a blade. And with that red liner material and the white G10, that stuff is just slick. But this should be a good little knife. I haven't put an edge on it yet. I'm just waiting to do that. But One thing with this design is that it's not great for chopping. As you can see, just with the blade, the way the blade comes down, you have to be on the edge of a table in order to get the clearance for your hand to get the blade fully on that. So I think this one would be a little better for cutting rope, stuff like that. I'm gonna tweak this design a bit and change it, but I really, really like the way this knife feels. Also, you'll notice I didn't do much profiling on the scales. I left them fairly, like, obviously I rounded them out and smoothed them, but I didn't put like a Coke bottle profile or anything like that on. And it's got a fairly wide feel to it, but I really like it. It actually feels really good in the hand. And I made this one a little smaller on purpose because I've got large hands, and if I make everything to fit my hands, like this one here, you can see it fits fairly well, but not everybody has hands as big as mine, and I need to start thinking about that when I'm making my knives, because this one you can see my fingers a little more crowded, but my wife grabs this one and she loves it compared to something like this, which suits my hand better. So just something to think about when you're making your knives. Obviously, I think the best thing you can start with is making them fit you and making them good for you. But if you're making knives for other people, good questions to ask are, how big are your hands, you know? So you can get a really nice, great feeling knife. That's part of making a custom knife. If it's for somebody else, you can tailor these things. The thickness of the handle material. On all these ones, this is all 3/8 G10. I tried this one with 1/4 inch, and I actually think I'm gonna just pretty much be using 1/4 inch for everything, because even with my large hands, I think that's about as thick as I need. Unless you're going to like a heavy blade like that Chupacabra or something like that. Really, that's plenty of grip, and that's all you really need. So that's pretty much it. That's about all I have. I've got sheaths for some of these knives. This was the very first leather sheath I made, and it is ugly. Terrible job on the riveting there, but I'm not a leather guy. Leather's very difficult, and the one thing is I soaked this leather, I wrapped the blade up, watertight and saran wrap, and then I sandwiched it with some big heavy leather bags. So it's got a really nice tight fit for this knife. For a leather sheath without any Kydex retainers in there or straps, it actually stays in fairly well. It will fall out if I shake it hard, but for a belt carry knife, that thing isn't going anywhere. And like I say, I've carried this with me hunting quite a few times, hiking, camping. Heavy blade, but I like it. You can use it as a good tool. You can scrape a ferro rod with it, and it's got a decent belly for skinning, and also it's really good for processing wood. So this is my very first Kydex I made. Really ugly, really ugly. This is before I even had Kydex fasteners. I just used some very small screws with nylock nuts, and I ground them down so they wouldn't snag on my pants. But it works. This knife lives by my wood stove, never leaves there, and I just process my kindling with it. Use it almost every single day in the wintertime. Now that it's warmed up and I don't have fires every single day, I'm not using it as much, but good, reliable knife. And then this was one of the first Kydex sheaths that I had made, where I actually had proper fasteners, clips and stuff, and decent retention there. Nice click, and works pretty good. So that's pretty much a look at the knives that I've made that I have on hand. Again, I will say that I've got a lot more than this. I've made quite a few more than this for other people. I've sold quite a few of them, but just to give you a little look, Flavio, hope you enjoyed the video. And if you have any questions about these, feel free to ask, and I'll do what I can to answer them. If you were to ask me what my favorite knife of all of these is, I would have to say this little guy. I don't know what it is about this knife, but I really like it, this little Skinner. It's a shame I haven't even tried using it yet. I like the hand-hammered finish on it. I just need to get a sheath made for it, and then I'll put the edge on it, because I don't want to be doing making sheaths with a sharp edge knife, and this thing comes to a fairly fine point. It's got a fairly nice bevel on there, and once this thing gets sharpened up, it's going to be razor sharp. So I can't wait to get this one done. A lot of people have asked if my knives are for sale, and yes, for the most part. All these are for sale. Obviously, I can't sell my daughter's knife or my son's knife or my very first knife, but pretty much anything else, the giveaway knives, those ones are not for sale. Basically everything else, oh, my gardening knife, sorry, maybe none of them are for sale actually, but yeah, knives are for sale. If you'd like to buy one of these, let me know. I've started another website, and I'm still working on it, homesteadknives.com, and I'm I've had a lot of requests, and I'm making a lot of knives for people now, that it's time that I kind of get some information online, make it a little easier to get a hold of me and to order knives. And I would like to stay in the custom knife vein, so I don't know if I'm going to be doing big production runs of knives for sale. I obviously will do some of that. I've got about, right now, maybe 9 or 10 blades in the works that are for sale, but custom stuff is kind of a little more fun because you can ask questions like, what color do you want the knife? How big are your hands? What are you going to use it for? And you can design the knife and tailor it for a specific purpose, and I kind of enjoy that a little bit more. I will just show you real quickly. Not many of these have been sharpened. Even these two have not been sharpened yet, these giveaway knives, because I still want to get the sheaths done first, and the very last thing I do is put the edge on it. That way you're not risking damaging the edge. You're not going to cut yourself making sheath form and stuff. But one of the knives I do have an edge on is my son's knife here, and I'll just show you that real quick. Now, one of the tests that everybody seems to like doing to show how sharp their blades are is to cut through a piece of paper. And it's a decent test. If you've got a really nice keen edge on there without a lot of burrs, you should easily be able to cut through a piece of paper. Just like that. But I'm going to show you another test that I like even more. The reason I like this test more is because it looks cooler, and I hadn't tried this one for a while, but basically I've got, this is a Haynes manual for my trucks. I'm not going to go crazy on it. I still need this, but if they made phone books, maybe they still do and I just don't have them, but you could do it with a phone book too. But I think this is a neat test. That's pretty cool. I think if you can do that with a knife, it's got a pretty good edge to it. Alright guys, well there you have a quick look at some of the knives that I've made. I would say that's probably half of them. But if you have any questions on any of them or would like more information, please let me know. I'll do what I can to get you the information. And I've got to go clean up all that paper now. And just a reminder before I leave, the contest that we have, we're giving away that Bushcraft knife once we reach 2,000 subscribers. So if you like the videos, give them a thumbs up, subscribe, comment, share. Whatever you can do to help grow this channel to 2,000 would be greatly appreciated. And once we're there, I'll be sending a Bushcraft knife to one of you. I appreciate watching the video, guys, and I'll be back with another one tomorrow. Cheers.